Hello, Bible readers. It is Monday, November 16th. We're reading from 1 Samuel 21 to 24 and Acts chapter 6, verses 1 through 15. This portion of Acts is especially interesting as Luke has so far portrayed a restored people and the authority of the 12 over them, as prophesied. Now, Luke needs to prepare for the second stage of what Jesus talked about in Acts chapter 1, verse 8, which you might remember is the key to the whole book, that the gospel would move out from Jerusalem to Judea and Samaria and to the rest of the world, right? Luke does this by establishing a continuity of ministry, which for Luke means a succession of prophetic authority. It kind of goes along with apostolic succession. You may know that the Roman Catholic Church, the Episcopalian Church or Anglican Church, they both, and even some Lutherans, care a lot about whether a bishop connected all the way back to Peter, who has made physical contact with the next bishop and the next for every generation for 2,000 years. There are denominations who care, who find authority to be physically passed on, and not only physically, but that matters, this idea of apostolic succession. And that's kind of what Luke is talking about here, that there is a succession of prophetic authority, and we see it especially in this section with Stephen. Stephen is actually shown to have an experience a lot like Jesus, and Luke wants to show that the 7 who are appointed are worthy prophetic successors of the 12. And it's not that the 12 no longer have authority, it's that authority is radiating out even further to more people. So Luke describes Stephen in many ways a lot like Jesus is described. Jesus's passion is a lot like Stephen's passion, you could say. There's an open confrontation, there are spies, there's an agitation of the people, an arrest, a delivery to the council. Finally, Stephen has false witnesses against him. He is charged with blasphemy. He's accused of speaking against the temple. Luke does this very intentionally to make Stephen out to look like and sound a lot like Jesus and be treated a lot like Jesus, because he now has the power, that prophetic power and authority of Jesus. How will people respond, right? That's going to be the question, and we'll see. Okay, so that's the Acts reading. There's a lot of plot that's going on in this portion of 1 Samuel. These chapters contain stories from the period of time when David is a fugitive trying to stay one step ahead of Saul, which of course he successfully does. During this period, David is gathering a personal military force around himself. He lives the life of an outlaw, and although Saul commits violent atrocities, David spares Saul's life and seeks reconciliation with him, which shows, at least at this point, what kind of man David is. He's very faithful and obedient to God. As we go through in chapter 21, we've got a story about David and the holy bread that typically would not be consumed by people. But it's a story that shows clearly that David represents the future God is bringing for the sake of Israel. The laws of holiness are intended to show honor and respect for the holiness of God, but remember, they're never an end in and of themselves. And so that's why, although like a rule is being broken here, it is shown that it was a time and place that was appropriate for such a thing. And in the next story, in chapter 22, we've got David is attracting to himself outcasts of the land. That's the kind of people who are recognizing that, oh, he's the one with true authority and power. And that's important because, Jesus, when Jesus is gathering supporters around him, he's many times likened to David. And David here in the beginning of David's story anyway, he's gathering outcasts and those on the margins. When we get to chapter 23, we've got a bunch of escape stories. And in them, God does not dramatically intervene to save David. I think it's important to see that David takes courageous action. He's making wise decisions, reacts swiftly. The narrative is confident that God is at work. Divine grace, though, is not done like magically, but instead through David's considerable abilities. And the last thing I wanted to get at is that in David's actions, when he doesn't kill Saul and could in chapter 24, we see one whose final moment in receiving power is enabled by forgiveness and compassion. David breaks the cycle of violence and vengeance, and new possibilities are opened. It is hard to break the cycle of vengeance, and yet David shows it's not only possible, but it opens new possibilities. I am one with my God. My God is with us, all of us, at all times and in all places.